I think you either love it or disdain it for the horrific things it stands for. Capitalism! Hi plant buddies, my name's Kirsten and today I want to talk about the Philodendron Birkin. This plant has definitely conjured up a lot of polarizing opinions. People have very strong feelings about this plant, and so I want to talk a bit about that, about its origins and about its care, and some of the more contentious aspects about this plant. So let's start off by talking about the appearance of the plant. As you can see, it's got these dark green leaves with these creamy pinstripes that are very striking. When the leaves first come out, they come out almost white and the chlorophyll comes in, and then the green actually develops like a Polaroid, which is very cool to watch. Eventually, over the lifetime, over like a course of a few months, the creaminess fades down to a greener thing. Eventually it goes to kind of like, that's what you're going to expect it to be like when it's an old leaf. But the very cool thing is that this is a champ for growing. It is continuously growing. It's just given leaf after leaf after leaf. It does not care what season it is. It really doesn't. It's just amazing. Actually, I should have put this in my Champs Through Winter videos. There's so many leaves that are about to pop out in this. It's unbelievable. I absolutely love this plant. It's also very structural and kind of weird. And when people see this plant, even though it's not like the rarest or anything, this is one of my plants that people actually comment on the most. So before I start talking about the more contentious issues, it's important that I talk about where it came from, because that's sort of key into what happened later. Essentially, once upon a time, there was a plant nursery that was creating a load of Philodendron Rojo Congos, which are a hybrid of the Philodendron Congo and the Philodendron Imperial Red, which is also a hybrid of something else. Somebody working at the nursery noticed that one of the Rojo Congos had mutated into this weird looking plant. As you can see, it's very different to the Rojo Congo. So they decided to propagate it via leaf cutting to see if they could produce a new consistent plant, which it turns out they could. Now, after gaining a bit of publicity, it became really obvious that this was a desirable plant, so it went almost immediately into tissue culture for mass production. Now, it was pretty difficult to get before, but roll on to the pandemic and lots of people got into plants, it became extremely sought after and very difficult to get hold of because the supply that they had couldn't meet the demand, so the price shot up. So in order to capitalize on this, the nurseries responded to the demand and created even more and pushed them out there for roughly the same high price for quite a few months. So lots of people then were able to get hold of it. Now, for a few months, it wasn't obvious that they were very easy to get hold of. So lots of people jumped on the chance that they could suddenly get hold of them and were willing to pay a little bit more. But then they just shot up everywhere and they were so affordable. So the people who were the early adopters, who had managed to get hold of one when it was super bougie and difficult to get, lost a bit of money on it. So that's how it kind of first got its bad name. And you have a lot of like the big YouTubers out there who have slated this plant because of it, because they think it represents capitalism and that it's not even that pretty. But hey, everyone's entitled to an opinion, right? Essentially, a lot of people looked at this plant as if it was a bit of a con and ripping people off. It was at this point that I decided to pick one up because I think they are beautiful and they were dirty cheap. I myself got this one here for £5 and this one here as a bog-off. For those of you that don't know, a bog-off is a buy one get one free. You might notice that this one here does not look like the other one in many places, and that leads me to my next point of contention, which is that this plant reverts really easily, which I assume is why I got it free. There are tons of people on Reddit who have talked about how their Birkin is reverting. They're really upset by it. They're saying, what's wrong with my plant? What have I done wrong? I don't understand. And essentially, they are posting pictures a lot like this. And this is essentially how the first reversion typically comes in on this plant, which actually looks really cool, I think, personally. And this was the first reverted leaf that my Philodendron Birkin came with. When I first got this, it was a very small baby and it was mainly green, and it just had this like one reverting leaf here. And I was just really fascinated to watch what happened on it. So this can revert in a couple of ways. It can either go completely green, like just the normal Congo, or it can revert back like mine has to the Rojo Congo, which I think is pretty cool because it's like these red streaks coming through. It is possible to reverse the reversion or stop the reversion and get it back to a plant like this. And that is by cutting back to the last point that the mutation was stable and then getting rid of like the reverted part completely, which you could propagate off if you wanted and create like a new plant of a Rojo Congo, or you could just throw it away if you don't like the Rojo Congo. I'm not actually interested in cutting this back, probably because I have the other one. But if I didn't have the other one, I would probably be doing something else. I would take an insurance policy. So I would take a part where there was a stable mutation and I would propagate that off as an insurance policy and create a new plant that was just Birkin. That would probably be what I would do. The other weird thing about this mutation is, as you can see, this is like fully reverted now. Totally, this part is totally reverted and everything that's coming out of it is most definitely a Rojo Congo for life. But this one here that it came with is actually now, ever since this, putting out Birkin leaves. So, you know, there's a Birkin leaf that came from it. This is the newest one. That one was a Birkin leaf that came from it as well. So it is possible that the plant will just revert again back to the Birkin just by itself. However, I don't think that that is going to be the case when the plant is already fully gone Rojo. I think it's only the case if, like, for instance, here it's bled in. So, I mean, look at that. Look at that stem. Do you see that? That's very, very cool. So let's talk a bit about the care of this plant. Plants need light, so that is a good place to start. Like a lot of epiphytic philodendrons, this needs bright indirect light. I have these both in very, very good light, although slightly different areas, but both of them are in very, very good light. People might think that the reversion of this is to do with the light, but I don't think that's the case because it was already like that when it came to me, and it had just come from a nursery, which we know is like the ideal conditions. It always has like the best lighting, and it's continued to do this in my care, so I don't think it's got anything to do with light. However, the more light you give it, the brighter this will come out. Essentially, the white will come out, and then eventually it will fade. That's just part of the plant and what it does. Water is another thing to talk about, of course. This is a plant that you want to let dry out a little bit, essentially. I think it would be very susceptible to root rot because you can see it's got these leaves are very thick, and they're thick for a philodendron, and they're quite glossy as well. The roots in it as well are quite chunky. They're not fine roots, so the whole plant is holding a lot of water in itself. So letting it dry out is kind of important. Obviously not for long periods of time. If you want to make your life a bit easier, you could use a moisture meter like this one here. I like to water it when it gets to about 2 or 3. You don't really want it to get less than 2. It likes chunky, well-draining soil like most sort of aroids do. But like I said, it can afford to dry out this one and probably does well from it. I would never, ever overwater this. I think it would be disastrous. As far as temperature and humidity are concerned, this is a tropical plant, so it obviously likes heat and humidity. It's quite tolerant though. Normal household temperature is fine, and normal household like humidity is fine. It likes likes it kind of 50% humidity and above, but it can drop down to as low as like 35, I think, and it's kind of fine. It's just a very, very easygoing plant. But naturally, obviously, they do a lot better when they've got the right heat and humidity. But I don't live in a tropical rainforest, so what are you going to do? As far as propagation goes, this can be propagated by stem. So you just cut with a sharp knife just underneath a node and then pop the leaf stem and make sure the node is in water, and you should get some roots relatively quickly, which of course is going to be useful if you want an insurance policy plant. And finally, with regards to toxicity, it is a philodendron, so it is toxic to humans and animals. It has calcium oxalates in it, which make you extremely sick, so it's a good idea to keep it out of reach of nibbly pets or like toddlers, just in case they start to get a bit interested. All in all, I think this is a really cool plant. I think you should definitely get one, whether it reverts or not. It's a lot of fun to grow. It's a lot of fun to just watch it develop. It's definitely one of my favourites. I'm interested to know though, do you have a Philodendron Birkin? Do you want a Philodendron Birkin? If you've got one, has it reverted? It would be so cool to know other people's experience of this plant and how they are getting on with it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more. Cheerio!